All right, I think I've got a real good game plan for finishing this super lead. Now, someone said in the comments that I was working in an odd fashion. He would have taken everything out and started fresh, and I went ahead and started doing the board. And I'll tell you the honest reason I do that is because if I do just a video that's nothing but, oh, this is terrible, got to rip everything out and start again, and just show that whole process, it's real discouraging for the owner. So by showing the board with the new components, it puts a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. It's just a reassurance that everything is gonna be cool. So after I did all that, I have now gotten everything out but the wires from the transformers, and I replaced the mounting hardware for the power transformer and output transformer because it was all janked. It was just all messed up and chewed up and yucky. And I've cleaned everything out, and I've removed the filter caps, and I deburred those rough edges. A little bit more to go on this one here. I'll get in there with my deburr a bit more right there. I thought I had that one better. They did a really nasty job when they drilled those out to 1/2 inch. They must have used a drill bit rather than a step bit. That explains why it's all chewed up. So I got a little bit more to do there. I've got all the tube sockets very thoroughly cleaned. I'm going to try to keep these original tube sockets. They measure okay, and they are now running clear when I run isopropyl alcohol into them. So I don't see there's no reason as of right now that they need to be changed. If they do, we will. We'll get there. One consideration, this amp had a real janky homebrew solution for the impedance selector switch, and it's hardwired to 117 volts, and they just had a plastic plug that didn't quite fit this opening. And I think I've got a good solution, which will allow me to put a master volume pot here, post-phase inverter master volume, and to put a good quality impedance selector switch here. I got these 1.5 inch steel fender washers with a 3/8 inch center opening. And I'm going to make a little jig with some wood and a 3/8 inch bolt and a template, which will let me put very precise holes, 0.188 inches in diameter for a number 6 screw, in such a way that when I mount it here, it will be centered. There's one on either side. I can't do it by hand here, but they'll be centered and very secure with a nice looking screw, or maybe a hex cap screw, and a washer, and then nuts on the back, really making this part of the chassis. And then you'll have a nice surface there, and then there'll be Marshall style knobs on the pots and switch, or maybe I'll go chicken head or something. But I think that'll be the best way to do this. Gives a very good mechanical support for the master volume pot and the new impedance selector switch. If you're wondering, the one that Marshall makes now is just way too big for this hole. And for me to buy a drill punch for that, a punch press for the real big opening, it's about a $400 investment for something I end up doing maybe once every 3 to 5 years. So it's a shame Marshall changed the size. It's a shame no one has come up with an off-the-shelf fit for this, but we are in a specialized industry. So I could do it on the outside, but that looks terrible. If I do it here, and the knob takes up most of that space, it'll look pretty good. It's on the rear of the amp anyway. The important thing is that it's going to be even and strong and good support. So I think that's the best way to go. Maybe I'll show the little jig I make for my drill press when the time comes. Alright, here's the chassis. And I got lots and lots of dirt off, and the majority of the rust is off. The remaining is impregnated with WD-40, which will keep it pretty much here for a good long while. If this is your amp, or you have an amp like this, I would suggest just taking it out of the cabinet once a year, putting a little WD-40 on your finger and just rubbing around like that. That's the easiest way to do it. Or you can get a little sponge if you want. Just kind of give the chassis a little bit of help. It'll keep the rust from getting worse. All the tube sockets have been cleaned. Deep cleaned. I got out a bunch of old flux, a lot of old dirt, and a couple of cartons of Camels. Some real nasty stuff came out of those sockets. But the tension is good, and now we'll have metal-to-metal contact. I got the old duct tape or gaffer tape residue off here. Everything feels a lot better. You can definitely feel where the plating has corroded and there's some rust trying to happen. But, you know, without taking everything off this and taking this to a machine shop to have it sandblasted and replated, there are limits to how beautiful it can look. And it will look beautiful in its own old funky way. You can see the new higher quality stainless steel screws holding the transformers in place with some washers this time so that the screws aren't at an angle chewing through the flanges as they were before. So now it's time for me to put the new filter caps in the cap holders and put all those back in place so we can do the next bit of fun stuff. Alright, the new filter caps are in place, F&Ts. They're not soldered yet, but everything's mechanically secure. Let's look at the other side. Alright, all the hardware is back in place. Someone had replaced one earlier in the lifespan of the amp with a pretty crappy one, so I'm putting the same stuff that's holding the choke in place. The ones that will be visible have the original brass hardware. But you may notice that all the ground lugs are gone. I'm not going to redo this with the original ground scheme. And that will be its own separate video coming up soon on how to ground a Marshall for lowest noise. And ground in general, it'll probably be part one of a series on grounding because it is a deep subject. But this Marshall and the Excalibur will be good real-world examples. And I've got some 60s Fenders here too, which are another really good example of the pros and cons. So it'll be fun to get in deep with that stuff. But that will come soon.